Okay, let's move on then. And some time ago, we created this website, the COVID-19. This is the yellowcard.ukcolumn.org website, all about COVID-19 vaccine analysis. And the reason that we did this was because the MHRA had made access that, although they made access to the data available, they made it available in such a format that it was really useless to anybody for finding out anything about what was going on with COVID-19 vaccines. So look, we have done the same for the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, and you can find this new website at fcdospending.ukcolumn.org because the Foreign Office publishes all their spending over £25,000 on a fairly regular basis. Now, the most recent data is up until May 2022, and it begins in September 2020, and that's because at this point we have only added the data since the merger of the Foreign Office and the Department for International Development. We'll be adding data prior to that very, very shortly. But look, if we put this back on screen a second, we've got a little video clip here, which hopefully will play. Sorry, let's go back. There we go. So, and there's a filter form there, and this just gives you a very brief idea of how many organizations the Foreign Office is putting money into. And the basic point about this is that although we can discover who is getting paid and how much they're getting paid and when they're getting paid, we don't find out from the Foreign Office data what they're getting paid for. So one of the key points here is that we're going to ask everybody to get involved in trying to find out what the money is being spent on specifically. And that's going to involve lots of freedom of information requests. But if we just very briefly put this on screen, this is the spending month by month since September 2020 until May 2022. And one of the real key periods here, I think, Brian, is February, because it's just immediately prior to the start of the Ukrainian conflict. And suddenly there was this huge spending spree by the Foreign Office just prior to Ukraine conflict beginning. They effectively doubled the amount of money that they spent, nearly £1 billion in 1 month being spent on Foreign Office projects. But if we take a couple of examples, let's look at what they've spent on BBC Media Action. Well, we're showing a trend graph to show how much they're spending per month. But if we look at some of the detail, can you see how much they're spending there, Brian, top right-hand corner?
452.
No, above that in red.
£8.5
million
okay.
in that period on BBC Media Action. If we look at the British Council, it's even better because there they've spent £345 million in that period. And look, here's the key point. When I say that we don't know what they're spending it on, it all gets allocated to an accounting line, which in this case is called program spend, which is held in an Oracle database. But we don't know what the money's being spent on, and we need to start finding out what the money's being spent on. But this is, for anybody researching the activities of the Foreign Office, I think a brilliant resource, and we just would like to see people sharing this as widely as possible.
Indeed, well, it is a brilliant resource, and of course the yellow card changed a lot of people's views on what was happening around vaccine adverse reactions and the recording of the data. And this, I think, is going to do the same. Huge amounts of money. For anybody who doesn't know, BBC Media Action claims to be a charity that works alongside the BBC. It's funded by governments, including overseas governments, the Americans, for example. And its activities seem to be particularly dubious because, of course, in Syria, UK column highlighted the fact that their project managers were boasting that they could help achieve regime change by working with dissidents in Syria. So presumably the same thing is happening in Ukraine because, of course, BBC Media Action has been working in Ukraine in order to set up Zelensky's media system via the organization Suspilny. So vast amounts of money going into a charity. That's what the public's being told. That is a lie. David, it seems to be pretty obvious now that we are dealing with a government that is in UK that is absolutely out of control. We have no idea what the morality of politicians is. We have no idea what their business connections we don't know what they're doing. We don't know who chooses the prime minister, but we are getting to see who lies in order to cover up the truth about what has been happening. You called it a government of occupation some time ago, and I think this is beginning to fit more and more.
Well, I mean, what you're seeing here is just the sheer waste on one level. There's obviously agendas being played out, so it's not simply waste. It's what they're doing. They're doing in the dark. They're doing in secret. They're doing in our name, and we don't know. You're quite right. We don't know what it is. The spike in spending immediately before the Ukraine war is extremely concerning. What exactly is going on here? And this is all meant to be stuff that's, rather public spirited and helping charities and doing good and all the rest of it. That shouldn't be correlated with the outbreak of, well, it shouldn't precede the outbreak of war, shall we say. And then there's the sheer waste of it. I mean, we have economic crises. We have a situation where in Britain and indeed throughout the West, we can no longer afford our governments. They're all operating on ever-increasing amounts of debt, borrowing from the future to pay for today. We can't afford this. And it is crushing and drowning out actual economic activity and causing an impoverishment of the entire nation. And what are they spending it on? It doesn't look very impressive. It looks like rampant waste and people in power without any accountability, without any responsibility, or without any integrity, spending money like it's water, it would appear.
Yes, and just 2 quick points. I've already identified, we'll come on to detail of this in the future, but I've already identified one tranche of money that went to a company, and the money was sent into the company's bank account on the day that the company was dissolved. So that, there are questions involved here. And I'm just going to say, we've got to thank our membership for the fact that this website exists, because it's your support that has brought it about.
Yeah, absolutely. Somebody has said, is this just a slush fund for black ops, presumably referring to Ukraine, but also other countries? And I think the answer to that idea is yes, it probably is.